Ever wanted to smash countless hordes of zombies, demons, and what the hell are those? Want to do it in a post-apocalyptic Victorian-inspired steampunk nightmare? Well, then maybe Grim Dawn is the action RPG for you. Released originally by Crate Entertainment for PC in 2016, and after receiving several expansions, it is finally getting a port to Xbox in 2021. Grim Dawn is one of the better action RPGs you'll find on either platform, and the fact that its developers previously made Titan Quest should tell you why. While commonly thought of as a competitor for the Diablo franchise, Grim Dawn instead brings a lot of deviations to the table that makes it truly stand on its own. From the dual class system to the devotion system, and even various types of component and infusing options to modify your equipment, and much more diverse set of resistances and damage types. It stands among the more complex of the genre. Gameplay-wise, Grim Dawn does feel similar to its predecessors, with point-and-click action gameplay reliant on knowing your skills and positioning to maximize damage dealt and minimize damage taken. While many other action RPGs have you facing off against smaller clusters of enemies or trampling massive hordes without a thought, Grim Dawn doesn't seem afraid to mix it up and hurl massive swarms of enemies at you at one time, while reserving some maps for facing off against individual, larger, and more dangerous bosses who may even have ads. Overall, the combat in this feels fine, about as impactful as most of the contemporaries, but could use some more weight to it, with only a few action RPGs in this category, like Torchlight, having the right weight to their combat. As expected, when possible, you want to play this with mouse and keyboard for the optimal experience, but with the addition of controller support as part of the process of porting it to Xbox, the controller functionality is definitely something worth considering. And overall, I would say on controller it feels a bit better than Diablo 2 Resurrected, but does seem a bit clunky compared to titles like Shadows Awakening, which is expected when dealing with a game designed for keyboard and mouse first, as opposed to one designed for multi-platform play from the get-go. Graphically, Grim Dawn is just what it looks like on the tin, a competently designed action RPG with post-apocalyptic style guns and melee weaponry, with fantastical and explosive abilities, and isometric but still 3D graphics, so you can rotate and adjust your viewing angle to aid in gameplay. The actual character model is fairly mundane and cannot be customized outside of equipment, but some of the designs of various monsters is quite enjoyable, and for the most part they have distinct silhouettes, so you know you're facing pretty much the same thing at the start of the encounter if you look at these silhouettes. Though on a kind of chaotic scene where you have a lot of spawn-ins, it can get a little hard to tell what you're fighting moment to moment. When it comes down to mechanics, there's a lot to go over with this game since, as mentioned, it sits on the more complex end of the spectrum, mostly thanks to the dual class system and their interactions with a mechanic called devotions, and how these all interact with your item and skill choices, of course. In regards to the classes, at first you are given the option to choose one of 9 classes when you reach level 2. This will determine how the beginning of the game will go for you, ranging from the tanky soldier to the more magical arcanist or even the more minion-based necromancer, and everything in between, each with a distinct feel. As soon as you reach level 10 though, you'll be given the opportunity to select an optional second class to augment your abilities should you so choose, giving you a massive number of potential combinations if you take advantage of it. This complexity is layered on by the devotion system, a set of points you unlock through clearing shrines scattered throughout the world, that can then be used to provide passive buffs or even triggered abilities to your attacks and defense. Personally, while I love the idea of this devotion system, as you can tell by looking at it, it is overwhelming to say the least, since each constellation requires prerequisites. Some as simple as 1 point, which is gotten from the central star, to others that require completing several other constellations to reach your goal, and even a few that you can actually juggle around through respecs to make it self-supporting. Overall, it is a mechanic ripe for spending hours to optimize it on your character, but unfortunately, also due to its complexity, it's prone to overload that results in the mentality of, I'm just going to pick a couple constellations and grab what I can get from there. For me personally, I don't know it well enough, so I generally just forget I have devotion points until I get to a slow point, and then I invest them into whatever theme I'm doing at the time, which is somewhat helped by the fact that there is a search function, but this is far from optimal, but I doubt it's uncommon to actually do, especially since people are looking to only do a couple playthroughs sometimes rather than dedicate years of their life to actually replaying the game multiple times over. In terms of equipment, the game has the usual massive pile of loot drops, and thankfully a loot filter to help sort through them to an extent. Though even with that, the number of potential modifiers is massive, so getting an exact rare or magic item that you want can be pretty rough on your first playthrough, though there are also more fixed pieces of gear that can make your item hunt a little easier because you can look for something by name. This is also helped by the fact that you can also craft and roll your own equipment with core modifiers, as well as bonus modifiers based on the crafter you have make it, which you unlock several throughout the course of the game, and you even get to choose a few. One of the more arduous parts, though, is having to gather all the recipes, which can take several playthroughs to see even a good portion of them. Though thankfully recipes are shared among your characters, rather than isolated to just one, so each time you play through, you are completing that list further. On top of that, you also have components that are dropped from enemies that can add smaller, guaranteed bonuses to your equipment, as well as augments that do much the same, but are gotten from merchants and quests. Another major difference between these is that components are often used as part of the crafting, whereas augments generally are not. In case you wanted to recover a component, or even just strip a component to replace it on a piece of equipment, there are merchants that can be used to recover one while destroying the other. So using them early is not a big problem, only needing careful consideration if you plan to use a rare component on a rare piece of equipment that you don't want to lose either of. As far as how you progress through the world itself, the game implements a few scaling difficulty factors in each difficulty, ranging from the more mundane aspect of having varied enemy levels based on the level of your character and difficulty penalties, to the more complex faction system, which, while interesting, is a little bit underutilized outside of unlocking more recipes from friendly factions and more boss spawns from hostile factions. It only really gives you a limited opportunity to choose whether a faction is hostile or friendly. In most cases, it's predetermined by the game's design. In addition to these difficulty scales, and of course the 3-tiered difficulty settings, and even a veteran mode, you can also have access to sort of bonus challenge feature called Challenge Dungeons, that offer difficulties above and beyond the normal game at the point that you find them. Some of these even implementing roguelike features where a failure will shunt you out of a dungeon and the player cannot escape until completion or death. Overall, if you enjoy games like Diablo and want to dive into something a bit more complex to tickle your brain, Grim Dawn is a great game to work your way into. While it lacks persistent online ecosystem, if you have friends who own the game, the multiplayer experience is enjoyable as other action RPGs, and even if you prefer the single player puzzle in these games, it is still great fun to make your way through, with what the game gives you at least. First time through, you can expect the game to take anywhere from 20 to 40 hours, though as you learn the maps, which are only partially randomized, you'll find your clear times will greatly improve as you learn where you need to go and the best way to get there. As far as price point, the asking price is a fairly good one if you plan several playthroughs, though if you're looking to enjoy just 1 or 2 playthroughs just to experience the world rather than master the game, I would definitely wait on a price drop for the core game and expansions.